Now let's get into some of the specifics involved in actually setting up your homestead in the country. Now folks, I'm going to try to cover a lot of territory in a fairly short time, so you'll need to use your pause button when we flash lists and maps up on the screen. Don't feel like you have to remember everything either. You can always refer back to this information later on if you need it. But right now, I want to start with a short overview of a way you can begin your process of relocating. First, I recommend making a list of the general location criteria that are important to you. And in that general location criteria, you can divide that up into 4 categories. The first being climate and topography. The next category would be demographics. The third would be available employment. And the fourth, the general mindset of the area that you'll be looking at. Now it's time for you to do some research and to look at various states and counties that fit the criteria that you're looking for, and also the criteria that the good Lord is showing you. The first place that I would look at would be the library, not only for the books that they have, which is a tremendous tool of course in researching, but also if you don't have internet access at home, libraries usually have computers with internet access, so I would count on that. Now, if you don't have a computer at home, you might not be familiar with the internet. A lot of times libraries have people that will show you how to do the internet, or they'll give you short courses in the evenings at some libraries to help you understand the internet. Believe me folks, the internet is a tremendous tool in researching areas for relocating to. Now another very important tool in helping you to research where you want to relocate to is the good old encyclopedia. And these World Book encyclopedias have a lot of valuable information on each state in the country. They'll have physical maps, they'll have climate data maps, they'll have population density maps, they even have road maps in here, as well as all other kind of information on each particular state. Another very important tool to get would be to get an atlas. And we believe that one of the best atlases that you can buy is the Delorme State Atlas. Delorme State Atlas. You can buy these at sporting goods stores, you can buy these at bookstores of course. And the good thing about these atlases are that they will show you where forested areas are in the state that you're looking at. And that's very important when you need wood for firewood to keep warm, or if you want to harvest some of your trees to build outbuildings or whatever. Also, these maps are very good by giving information, topographical information. Also, they show you where water sources are in the state that you might be looking at. So I highly recommend these atlases. Also, just plain old road maps. Those of you who are members of AAA Automobile Association of America, you'll know that you can get their maps free when you're a member. And you can get maps of every state in the nation if you're a member. And these are very good maps, so I recommend these. Also, a very good map to get of the area that you're looking at will be the National Forest Service maps. These are very valuable. They give information that the other maps might not carry. In these, they give you areas where there's public land and where there's private land. The public land is the land that we the people are supposed to own and the government manages. The private land is the land that individuals own, and that's usually indicated as being in white, whereas the public land is in green. Now, there are 2 very important books that I highly recommend having or getting for your research. The first one is How to Find Your Ideal Country Home by Jean Giroux. This is a very, very good book. It covers so many things in here. You'll just find it extremely valuable in finding and researching information on relocating. And then another book that I highly recommend is this book by Joel Skousen. It's called Strategic Relocation. And friends, this is full of very valuable information. I highly recommend this book. I want to mention that you can get the addresses and the names of these authors at the end of this presentation in the Sources and Resources department. I also want to mention too that these two authors are not Adventists, therefore they might not, probably don't, understand the prophecies as we should understand them, so keep that in mind when you look at these books, but they're extremely valuable. Okay, now, the next thing you should do is, after you've researched, to start narrowing down your choices to just as few choices as possible. Then, get additional information on these areas. And one thing I would do is look at the negative things of an area. In other words, when you narrow it down to a specific area, look to see if there are nuclear power plants in the area or upwind from the area you're looking at. Also, hazardous waste dumps. Also look to see if there's chemical weapons storage areas or depots in your area or upwind from your area. Also military bases. Are there military bases nearby? Also, I would look to see if there's a reservation nearby with a casino. We know, or we've read about some folks that moved out to the country, or at least they thought they moved out to the country, and it was near a reservation which was out in the country, and the next thing they knew, a casino was built and thousands of people were coming out to the casino, and it was just like they moved from the city to the city. So beware of moving near a reservation. And then last in this area, I would mention, I would look or avoid states and counties that have high regulatory and oppressive building regulations. This is very important. They can be very intrusive. And folks, here at the end of time, this is what we don't need. As a general rule, I would say a poor county generally equates to a lower population, which generally equates to lower regulations. That's a good rule of thumb I think I would look at. Then, next, in getting additional information, I would subscribe to local newspapers and or little weekly advertising papers like penny pincher type papers that come out. A lot of times there's valuable information that you can glean from these, and most of the time these papers have their own website on the net, so you might not even have to subscribe. You can just get on the internet and get it. But with these, they'll give you a feel of the area. Now, so far what I've recommended to do, you can do this without even having to leave home unless you had to go to the library. Now, the next and final thing in this overview I recommend doing is to drive to the area that you're interested in. And while you're in that area, there's a few things that I recommend doing. That is talking to realtors in the area. And when I say talking to realtors, I would look for a realtor that specializes in rural land. I think you'll get a lot further, a lot quicker with a realtor that specializes in rural land. Also, I'd talk with business people. I would talk with the local people, particularly if you narrow down a part of the county that you want to move to. I would talk with the local people in that area. And then last, I would mention talking with the county extension office. You know, we are all needing to grow gardens to be able to survive in the future when we can't buy or sell. And a county extension office is very valuable in helping you to know what can be grown in the county, what part of the county grows what, and I think most counties will allow you to bring soil in and they can test your soil and tell you the nutrient status of your soil. So a county extension office is very valuable. Now, once you've done all of these things that we've just briefly covered, then folks, you're ready to start looking at individual pieces of land. Now later on we will go into the how-tos in looking at land. Okay, let's go back to the original list of general location criteria and look at the first division, climate and topography. Let's look at this first map. We're going to start out very basic here. This map shows the main climatic regions of the country. Notice there are areas that you might have thought would be very cold that are actually moderated by huge mountain ranges and ocean currents, among other things. Now let's consider rainfall. We all know that rainfall is very important. Water is crucial to sustaining life. And precipitation can be affected drastically by topography. Take for instance the Cascade Mountains. On the western slopes of the Cascade Mountains, they get a tremendous amount of rain coming in from the Pacific Ocean. And the mountains seem to stop the inflow of rain clouds, where they'll get up to 100 inches of rain on the western slopes. But you can go a short distance on the other side of the slopes, the eastern side, and they'll only get up to 6 inches annually of rainfall. So there can be a drastic difference in rainfall due to topography. Now let's look at an annual precipitation map. This map shows the average annual precipitation in inches. Bear in mind that generally speaking, west of the Great Plains, most of the precipitation comes during the winter, as opposed to the east that gets precipitation throughout the year. I want to make a note here. When you see a website at the bottom of the map, we put it there so you can go to that particular site to get a more clear picture for your close examination. Now, you know that precipitation does affect snowfall in the northern part of the region. So let's go to an annual snowfall map. You can see areas of light gray in the Rocky Mountains and Cascade Mountains. These areas get the most snow. Going down from there, depending on the tint of your TV screen, would be purple, bright pink, dark blue to light blue, dark green to light green, and ending with yellow, getting very little snow. Another category of climate and topography is elevation. This is one of the most important factors in snowfall. Elevation also affects climate, and particularly temperature. For every 1,000 feet of elevation you go up, the temperature drops 3.3 degrees in Fahrenheit. Now, friends, this can drastically affect your garden and your orchard, your fruit trees. And that's very important to have plenty of food in the coming days for God's people. Let's go to Country Living and read pages 9 and 10. Again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities into the country, where they can raise their own provisions. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. Now let's look at the plant hardiness map. One factor to consider in raising fruit trees is how cold your area can get in the middle of winter. The plant hardiness zone map you're looking at shows the average annual minimum temperature you can expect. When you narrow down to the area that you're going to look at more closely, check with the local nurseries and the county extension office to get more detailed information on your area of interest. Now let's look at the freeze-free period map. This map basically shows the length of growing seasons throughout the country. This particular map is so minutely detailed that you might not be able to read it on your screen. So once again, you can go to the website at the bottom of your screen if you need to. We just wanted you to know that there is a map available with this type of information. Now the next category under climate and topography is sunshine. We all know that sunshine affects our health positively for the most part, and also our mental health. But you know, it also affects our ability to generate electricity from the sun. Let's go to the average daily solar radiation map for June. This map shows that the most solar radiation is represented by the beige colored area. Next is yellow, and then green. Now let's look at the daily solar radiation map for December. And looking at the suitability of an area for using a solar power system, this is the most important map of the two, as it will show the solar radiation received during the darkest time of the year. Folks, there is a price to pay. The more sun you have, the less precipitation you'll have. And it's very hard to do without either one of those. By the way, the less precipitation you have, the less forestation, or the fewer trees that you'll have on your property, which means less possibility of getting firewood to keep warm in the future. It's very hard to do without either one of these, so I sure recommend trying to reach a balance. Now, the next category in our general location criteria is demographics. And in this, our first topic we're going to take up is probably almost as important as finding water on your property, and that is to find an area that has a low density, low population density. Let's go to our first map on that. Population density by county, which is put out by the U.S. Census Bureau. This map shows the population per square mile by county. The darkest colored counties are the most heavily populated. Okay, let's look at the next map that shows the population distribution for the United States in the year 2000. This map is made up of tiny dots. Each tiny dot represents 7,500 people. Now, we're not talking about the conglomeration of dots in the metropolitan areas. People are where the lights are. Here is Atlanta. And now you can see Dallas and Fort Worth. And now Minneapolis, St. Paul. And now Denver. And Seattle. Now usually the fewer the people in an area, the more liberty and freedom you will experience and have in that area. Our next category under demographics is reasons why high population density means instability in a crisis. Under this heading, we could put excessive specialization. This means there could be a presence of highly specialized and trained people that might not have the ability to take care of their basic needs in a crisis. Also, you could have massive food and water requirements. Now that's self-explanatory, but let's take it a step further. The authorities could use that to manipulate and control people, and that could be a disaster. Let's look at 5th manuscript release, page 305. In India, China, Russia, and the cities of America, thousands of men and women are dying of starvation. The moneyed men, because they have the power, control the market. They purchase at low rates all they can obtain, and then sell at greatly increased prices. This means starvation to the poorer classes and will result in a civil war. There will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Next is financial dependence. Most of us buy our basic needs and supplies with money, especially those in the cities, while those in the country can raise part of their basic needs, maybe even a good part of their basic needs. So in a crisis, those in the city would be in a terrible bind. There would be bank runs, and that would be just the beginning. Next is the potential for massive epidemics due to the increased contact with others. Next would be the potential for impaired movement or no movement at all. You know, we had a cousin in California who used to be on the sheriff's department in a certain county, and he told us about the time years back when California had a massive blackout. He said the interstates were absolutely jammed. You couldn't even go anywhere. He said the U.S. highways were almost as bad. You could hardly go anywhere on those. And then the state highways were almost as bad as that. And it wasn't until you got down to the tertiary or the county roads that you could really start moving around on. A friend 10 to 15 years ago once mentioned he was stationed in a city that had a population of about 150,000 people, and he was in the National Guard, and he mentioned the plans that the Guard had to completely cordon off that city within about 20 minutes in time of crisis. So folks, if the Guard had plans to do that for cities of 150,000 people 10 to 15 years ago, think what they're planning on doing now, especially with the presence of Homeland Security. Let's turn to Country Living, page 11. But ere long, there will be such strife and confusion in the cities that those who wish to leave them will not be able. We must be preparing for these issues. This is the light that is given me. Maybe this is a good time to ask the question, how far away from the city should we relocate? Maybe we should ask another question. Have we been given any counsel on this? Well, we do have indications from the Spirit of prophecy. That should give us an idea. Let me refer you to a website you can see at the bottom of the screen. You can go to it to read it for yourself. The reference is found in the booklet, Out of the Cities, on page 17, step 4, in the section titled, Taking the Next Step. Friends, even researchers who are not of our faith, who have studied what would most likely happen during times of crisis and civil unrest, have recommended that you locate your home not less than 1 tank full of gas away from any major city. A word to the wise should be sufficient. Avoid states with over 100 people per square mile, preferably below 50 people per square mile. But if you get down to 20 or below people per square mile, it could be pretty hard to find work, especially if your job depended on a population base. Look for an area that tends to be more self-sufficient in supplying life's necessities, such as farmlands, and especially areas that have sufficient water. Water is crucial. Look for a state that has lower taxes. And like I said before, a state that has fewer regulations. But beware, a state that has no income tax could indicate that they make up for it by having higher sales tax and or property taxes. Look at the local regulations in the area that you're interested in. Look at the building codes. Look at the planning and zoning departments. Hopefully they won't have a planning and zoning department. The poorer counties a lot of times don't even have those departments. The next section in the general location criteria is available employment. Many companies are allowing their employees to work at their home. We have some very dear friends who decided to leave the city and move to the country, move to the mountains. And one of them was going to quit their job. And the company, the Lord blessed them so much that the company told them that they wanted them to stay on and to work out of their home, and went so far as to run a long distance line to their home, so it would be a local call to the headquarters of the company. There's also cottage industries. Many are working out of their homes to craft marketable products. You can also be, of course, self-employed or have a home business. This will give you the maximum control of your spiritual environment. And friends, isn't that what it's all about here at the end of time, when we don't have much time left to be in control of our spiritual environment? You know, it's getting harder and harder to be a true Christian while being employed by others. The ethical issues are getting worse and worse. Another way of employment is having a business online out of your home. Now, I recommend that you look at Sources and Resources, the section at the end of this presentation, where we have listed books that give ideas on employment from your country home. Now, we'll go to the last section of the general location criteria, and that's the general mindset of the area that you're looking at. But first, let's go to Testimonies for the Church, Volume 4, page 110. Lot chose Sodom for his home because he saw that there were advantages to be gained there from a worldly point of view. But after he had established himself and grown rich in earthly treasure, he was convinced that he had made a mistake in not taking into consideration the moral standing of the community in which he was to make his home. The dwellers in Sodom were corrupt. Vile conversation greeted his ears daily, and his righteous soul was vexed by the violence and crime he was powerless to prevent. His children were becoming like these wicked people, for association with them had perverted their morals. Taking all these things into consideration, the worldly riches he had gained seemed small and not worth the price he had paid for them. This is a very important consideration, friends. This is also one aspect that is not so easily known. Visit the area that you've narrowed your prospects down to. Observe the local people. Observe local bulletin boards. Observe local newspapers. Is there a prevalence of bars and casinos, etc. in the area? Then ask the Lord to show you anything that you need to see in the area. And friends, He'll give you discernment. The criteria that we've just covered, as important as it is, should not be used as the only factor in your decision. God's leading must always be number one in the equation. Often the Lord uses human instrumentalities such as the information we've just covered as His means of guiding and directing us. But keep in mind, friends, that He might lead you to a situation you would never have chosen from looking at the statistics. Just remember, He knows best. Always obey God's leading, even if it doesn't make sense to you right now. In wrapping up this segment, let's look at Patriarchs and Prophets, page 126. In reference to the call of Abraham, quote, "It was no light test that was thus brought upon Abraham, no small sacrifice that was required of him. There were strong ties to bind him to his country, his kindred, and his home. But he did not hesitate to obey the call. He had no question to ask concerning the land of promise, whether the soil was fertile and the climate healthful, whether the country afforded agreeable surroundings, and would afford opportunities for amassing wealth. God had spoken, and His servant must obey. The happiest place on earth for him was the place where God would have him to be."
Open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth Thou hast for me. Place in my hand the wonderful that shall unclasp and set me free. Silently now I wait for thee. Ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my eyes, illumine me. Open my eyes that I may see. Open my ears that I may hear voices of truth thou sendest clear. And while the wave notes fall on my ear, everything false will disappear. Silently now I wait for thee. Ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my ears, illumine me. Spirit divine, open my mouth and let me bear. Gladly the home, truth everywhere. Open my heart, and let me prepare. Love with thy children, thus to share. Love to share. Silently now I wait for thee. Ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my heart, illumine me. Open my heart, and set me free. Set me free. Set